Welcome back to the Dallas Prospect. We have ourselves an interesting show today because we actually have an opponent finally for the Western Conference Finals. It was only a 24-hour wait, but it felt like an eternity to some extent. I was waiting with bated breath to see what we were going to get. And if you're just now looking, you'll see, hey, we brought back a familiar face to the show. Eni and Duca back with some Prospect live streaming here. Any, how you doing? It's been a minute.
I'm doing good, man. Lived a lot of life these last 5 months, but everything has been great.
Good.
Got my new setup, so probably this wall behind me, I'll probably have to fill it with something because this looks very plain. But here to talk about Mavs, Western Conference Final attendees. And we have Minnesota, so let's go.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like we were saying just before we went live, I was not expecting Minnesota to get here. I think they're a great team, and certainly I think they'll be favored in this series. I mean, I said that even in yesterday's stream. Like, regardless of who the Mavericks could conceivably draw in any potential series, even if they got through the West Finals, anybody they drew, even before the Knicks got eliminated. Well, maybe after the Knicks because of how beat up they were. But like, I was like, in almost any series, I see people doubting Dallas the rest of the way, favoring those opponents.
Yeah.
But when Minnesota went down 20 in Game 7, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. It's going to look like what we thought. We're going to get Luka versus Jokic. Nope. Turns out we're going to get Anthony Edwards and company. And this... honestly, I don't feel great about this matchup. Like we were both kind of apprehensive about that. What are your thoughts?
Well, you're completely right in the fact that we, along with most of the NBA community, expected Denver to come out on top in the Game 7 matchup. However, they fell short, just I guess losing a 20-point lead some point in the second half. And I was of the opinion that as a Mavs fan, I actually was hoping Denver won that game. I think Denver would have been the more beatable matchup for us. We would have been the underdog either way. But I think Minnesota has the tools to make life just a little bit more tougher for the Mavericks. With their two guys, especially with Luka and Kyrie. So Wednesday's the game 1. We'll see what they roll out with. Man, I was score watching. I wasn't watching the game live, and I saw that 20-point lead. I was like, all right, good. Like, got the matchup. I can see the Mavericks, giving Denver a run for their money, but it's Timberwolves. Now, I am banking on their inexperience. I'm banking on maybe their lack of offensive output, maybe with only like Ant being like the dude who I can consider probably scoring, off for a 40-point game, maybe Cat as well, and really no one else. But the Mavericks really are kind of in the same boat. With having two high-level scorers, highly dependable scorers, and not having a third reliable scorer. Here will be the difference.
Yeah.
Here will tilt the scales back in our favor a little bit. I won't say we'll be betting favorites, but it will be a little bit more even if there's a way we can get Maxey back.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of people in our corners of the Mavs fandom that are not super believers in Maxey, but he adds a different tool that can be very useful for the Mavericks and can kind of swing things in our favor. And you know what? Actually Denver probably has something like that too with Naz Reid. So I don't know, man. This is a very interesting matchup, dude. It's a very interesting matchup.
Yeah, if it had been Denver with Jamal Murray being kind of roughed up and everything like he is, I felt a little better about that. It is true that just comparing to the round we just had, like the Timberwolves don't have as many offensive weapons as the Thunder did, but I do think they're a better defensive team.
Wait.
For that, like the thing is, like with Jaden McDaniels, he's not the same as Lou Dort. Like Lou Dort was such a physical player. They're both phenomenal defenders. I kind of go back and forth. Like I know some people are going to say that they think McDaniels is the better defender. I don't know about that. If Luke is already saying Dort is one of the 3 best defenders in the league, in his opinion, that doesn't leave much room for that. Again, taking nothing away from McDaniels, but just the physicality that you had to contend with there. And I think McDaniels has had some struggles at times with foul trouble. So other considerations to be made there. But you have to kind of look at it and see in this big picture sense, like, is this going to be as difficult of a matchup for Dallas? Maxey is going to be missed because of the versatility he can offer, even though they did find a little bit of that with PJ in the last series, that ability to kind of stretch the floor for them. And he hit at such a great clip in that series against the Thunder. I think he was like, what was his percentage from 3? It was north of 40. I want to say it was like 44 or something like that.
So because of the stuff that's been going on in life, I really haven't been keeping track of the numbers. Where I'll go on is feeling. And feeling, that's great. When PJ started shooting, I guess when he started getting hot, it did feel like the vast majority of the shots he took were going in. I'm not sure if it's at a 50% clip or if it was at a 40, 30. It didn't feel like that at the beginning when he first got on the Mavs. It felt like he was, just clanking. It was like, there's a little bit more oomph.
The 29 games he had with Dallas in the regular season, he was like 31.6% from 3. But in the Thunder series, when he finally kind of got going, he was.
Yeah, it felt pretty like, okay, everything he's putting up is going in. So I felt pretty confident. Even when he shot those free throws, I was like, you know what? For some reason, I felt more confident in him making these free throws than I did when Luka had the opportunity to tie the game in Game 4
with 10 seconds.
For some reason in my mind, I was like, he's gonna miss one. I don't know, but PJ has been stepping up. Derek Jones, he's been phenomenal. I don't know what the matchup is going to be for him. He's probably going to take the Ant role, and then I'll probably put PJ on. Cat. And then the rest, I don't even know what I would do with Luka at that point. Because are you going to put Kyrie on McDaniels? He's actually been playing pretty good.
I'll be curious what they do with that. I mean, you got Conley in there, so like,
Conley's roughed up. He has an Achilles strain.
So you think he's out? I just thought he was going to be.
No, he's going to play. He's going to play, but he's banged up.
Okay,
dinged up. I don't know if bang is a thing we say anymore.
Yeah, we'll see what that matchup looks like, but yeah, overall, I think the defense is going to be at a higher level, which is it's mixed feelings, right? Because like on one hand, I'm like, that is concerning because man, the physicality of the last series and the struggles that you had, like you worry, like, are we going to not be able to get enough offense? Where Luka's going to have a harder time, Kyrie's going to have a harder time. But it's like, having said that, what did we overwhelmingly see post trade deadline? With the identity shift of this team, they are built and have the mentality to win these slow grinding games. Where they don't even have to hit threes at 38, 40%, or whatever. They can win games where they're shooting the 3 poorly because they're going to beat you up on the boards, get points in the paint, and like limit anything you can do in the paint. So maybe this is a better draw than, like, the Thunder were a different challenge for sure. But I almost feel like because you're not having to match at the same level the firepower, maybe because of how you're constructed, you are actually in a situation where you're, I don't want to say advantageous, but at least equipped to deal with the challenge you're facing now.
Yeah. I do like the point. If I do sense a lot of games in this series will probably be those early 2010, 2000s games where the score will probably be like 98 to 95 or something like that, because you got two very heavily, very good defensive teams, and very good defensive and the very physical teams. Now, Um, Thunder, they were a pretty good defensive team. However, they lacked physicality. They lacked size. A lot of people said girth. Again, that's one of those words that is questionable in these times.
Yeah.
But and that's very true. Now, one of the things that we have to contend with, and sorry, my work computer might start making noise if I don't mute it, is, we have to contend with, the inside presence of Minnesota, which that was something that, I would say the Mavericks struggled with OKC. And so that's something we have to contend with again. If Luka can get his floater game going, if he can get his in-between game, then something a little bit more, be more decisive in that part of the court, I think that'll do very well for them. One of the things I was seeing in the Oklahoma City and even in the Clippers series is something that was quite annoying actually, was when he'll have his defender in quote unquote jail, right behind him, and then he'll go to doing a whole bunch of pump fakes, trying to pump fake passes, pump fake shots and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, at some point you just got to go up fast, make it. Cool. If you miss it, cool. But they got to know the threat is there. Yeah. Then that opens up the pump fakes, and now they'll have to react to this stuff. But he wasn't doing that enough to my liking.
Yeah, I agree with that. Part of what I consider in this too is Luka and Kyrie getting to go at Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert is going to be interesting, because if you remember a couple of years ago, the Mavericks basically made Gobert Defensive Player of the Year like unplayable in that series against Utah. Like he could not contend with what Dallas was doing and how they were attacking them. And so you could replicate a little bit of that again, making it difficult for him. All you got to do is get the switch, and then you've got Luka or Kyrie putting him in jail, not the same type of jail you were referring to with that situation, but putting him in just a really bad spot. And you can absolutely go at Karl Anthony Towns as well. I'm also looking forward to hopefully shutting up that narrative that they push in Minnesota and that he pushes all the time of greatest shooting big man of all time. Yeah. Look, I will sign up Dirk for our 6th man for this series just so he can shut that the hell up.
We need to at least have Dirk courtside, just so he's like, this is the real greatest shooting big man ever guy.
Yep.
But one of the things I'm not looking forward to in this series, man, I know I'm going to start to like Anthony Edwards less. I really like him, but for some reason, when you get in these hard-fought series, I tend to just be like, you know what I mean? Like, this guy.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, he's such a character and an interesting personality. Yeah. And that mixed with him backing it up on the floor, you love it. And there's something about his style of play that it just feels almost throwback and unique in a lot of ways. People always make the Jordan comparisons, which usually makes me hate a guy more, because I'm just like, can we not compare every guy to that? But like the swagger is there that you're like, okay,
you have to acknowledge that he came in that team, completely took it over from Cat. And you remember back in the days, Cat's been in the league for 9 years. There was a point in time where Cat was that player that if you were to start a franchise with who that player be, and all the GMs that did the poll all said Karl Anthony Towns back when he was younger and under 25. Yep. Now he definitely has fallen off since then, but he still has the talent. Even Jimmy Butler said it back when he was with the Timberwolves. He was like, look, he's the most talented person on the team. And he was saying Wiggins is the most of something else, but it's very true. Karl Anthony Towns is very talented. So that's something, again, we're going to have to contend with. But I do think PJ can make life difficult. Now, forgive me if I may be wrong. The 4 times the Mavericks played the Wolves this year was before the trades, correct?
The last time, all 4 were before the trades. The last time they played, or the one win Dallas got, was January 7th. And I believe in those other matchups, they didn't have they didn't have like either Luka or Kyrie. So it's like not only was it pre-trade deadline, but we didn't even face them with like a lot of times with like a full Luka Kyrie combination there. So really, really hard to judge this series.
Just like last one. I mean, I think it can go both ways. I do think there's a chance it's not as insurmountable.
I found the context here.
Okay.
So yeah, 1-3 against the Wolves in the regular season, all 4 games before the trade deadline. 2 losses were the Mavericks without Luka and Kyrie, and the other one was without Kyrie. So the one time we had even just Luka and Kyrie, even before the deadline, we did beat them.
Okay, well that gives me a little bit more hope. It's gonna be playoffs is different though. It's gonna be hard fought. I don't know if it's gonna go 6, 7, but there's ways. Kid, we have to talk about Kid.
Yeah,
we have to. He's been good.
He's unavoidable.
He hasn't been as a detriment like we believed. And I think
he's had some bad moments too, though.
Yeah, he's had some bad ones. But overall in this playoffs, I guess this playoff stretch, he's been good. He's made some good calls. I like the call to give Hardy some minutes. I hated the call when he had Kyrie, Hardy, and Hardaway in at the same time.
Yeah, that was an interesting decision.
Are we doing? The Hardaway call to give him minutes when he's not hitting is definitely still an interesting one. If I was Kid, I would still play him, but it's like I had to have a talk with him. I'm like, look, Tim, if you're hitting, you're gonna play.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not, I have to yank you. Yeah. And I do not want Tim to be shy from shooting. You're gonna have the green light. That's where your value is. But I, as a coach, have to know if you're not hitting, I have to take you out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't hit like 1 out of 3, then after that third shot, I have to take you out. And we'll probably try again at some point in the second half.
Or if you hit the side of the backboard one time, we're done already. Let alone twice on the same possession.
Yeah. Because Tim is someone that can be very valuable. And I know
if you get a burner game,
I know. Yeah. Frank is, saying he doesn't want to play Tim at all. And I get it. That's the sentiment that a lot of Mavs fans have. But if you got to harken back to 21 when the Mavs faced the Clippers, in 21, they went up 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the main reasons why the Mavs went up 2-0 is because Tim was lights out. I think he was shooting over 50%.
Yeah, he was having a great series until Game 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has those stretches where if he's a burner, you don't want to overlook or move past the fact that what if this is a game that Tim is completely on fire and completely shifts everything that we're trying to do. It will make Kyrie's life easier. It will make Luka's life easier. It will make the offense, way more efficient to go along with our high level defense. It can shift. If it was a consistent high level Tim Hardaway coming in, I would think the Mavericks would be the favorite. But for the very fact that he's been bum cheeks since the trade, then you got to play him. He had that game in Game 2, I believe, last one where he hit 17.
Yep.
The Mavericks don't win if he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
You have to keep trying him. I would play him a little less if he's not hitting.
Yeah.
But if he's coming, if he's showing you something.
And I'm even like, if I test minutes with him, it's in the first half.
Exactly.
I really don't risk it at all in the second half. I damn sure don't let him touch the floor in the fourth quarter unless he's already shown me this game is one of those games. I think that's part of it with Hardy is while he only shot like 1 of 5 in the last round, but the pace he played with, the decisiveness he played with, and like the playmaking he was and Tim had a couple good plays like that too. To be clear, there were a couple alley-oops he threw in the series too, to Lively. But what Hardy brought those last couple games, I thought was a really good late chess move in that series where I didn't really see how much OKC did to counteract that. And him not being in a rut, kind of like we were seeing with Hardaway after that game too, was huge. So it's good that at the very least you have another guy of a similar build, essentially, style. But I still think that Hardy, of the two, they're both going to be liabilities in their own way. But I lean towards Hardy unless you're already seeing in limited minutes that Hardaway might just be on one of those games.
And either one of them can get in that mode where they're just hitting everything.
Yep.
So a lot of So let me tell this to Mavs fans. This is my opinion. But I've seen a lot of data points on this. You need that what a lot of people coin as the irrationally confident person. You do, right?
I believe the word you used to use is ignorant. Some of his shot choices are just straight ignorant.
Ignorant is very much the case. Too many times, because this is what happens. I've seen this with Josh. I've seen this with Derek Jones. I've seen this with PJ. If they don't have the shot, a lot of times they're not driving in. They just locate Luka, Kyrie, and pass it back.
Yeah, reset.
And teams are beginning to try to jump that pass. Right? You need someone that can just switch it up. If they're not hitting, look, I know some people in the comments like, "Oh, it's too risky." You can risk 3 or 4 minutes in a game to see if something can shift in your favor, right? Especially if it's early. I do agree with you. First half, where the margin of error is not as slim as if it was in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is worth taking that risk because we do know what he's capable of doing if he's on fire.
It just being a series where, as we talked about, we expect the defense to be even stingier than what we just went up against. While on one hand, you might look at that and say, like, well, that means it'll just be harder for him to score. But the whole point is, if they're in that kind of zone, it's almost a game breaker sort of thing for them. If you're on a burner and he's just going to throw up anything and it's going to drop, like that game 2, he had 2 or 3 shots where, whether it's the and 1-3 or the shot clock expiring in the corner reset 3 late in that game, like several key plays. It's like, yeah, if you're having those kind of flashes and moments, then you're going to be effective in most any situation. So being able to do that against a team that is better defensively probably works even better in your favor. That's probably actually a bigger case for why you need to be willing to at least try. You just have to be very measured and cautious in how you distribute those minutes.
Yep.
Something else going even deeper on that earlier. So I mentioned the previous matchups with them, and I see this tweet from Nick Engstad talking about the Mavericks lineups in those specifically. So I mentioned 2 of those games were missing Luka and Kyrie. One of them was missing just Kyrie. The December 14th matchup, which was the first one, your lineup was Luka, Exum, Derek Jones Jr., Grant, and Lively. December 28th, Hardy, Exum, Derek Jones Jr., Grant, and Lively. The win on January 7th was Luka, Kyrie, Derek Jones Jr., Green, and Powell. So you didn't even have Lively there.
Oh, yeah.
And then January 31st, Hardaway, Green, Hardy, Grant, and Rashawn Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
So it really is difficult to say, to say like what this matchup is, because we've even pre-trade deadline, we haven't even seen a full strength. We haven't even seen a single game with Luka, Kyrie, and Lively available against them this year. So it's really hard to quantify this matchup. It's almost like you just take those previous data points and just throw them out, because they're not going to tell you much other than like maybe Luka's one-on-one matchup or Kyrie's one-on-one matchup when those opportunities were there, which was literally one game.
Very true. One of the things that also gives me hope about this one, about this matchup, is the Mavericks tend to do better against teams where their center isn't necessarily a shooter.
Yeah.
So that Gobert, Lively, Gafford matchup can be something. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to out rebound them to the levels of how we did against OKC.
Sure.
But in terms of staying home, being able to put pressure on the rim and not having to risk leaving a capable big man shooter open,
Yeah.
like Chet Holmgren, even though he didn't shoot the best, but we did see us against the Indiana Pacers how we struggled against Miles Turner.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something we're gonna have to deal with. This
Pacers are kind of a unique thing anyway with the pace they play, because like we barely played Gafford in those games, and I
Yeah.
think for one of them, I know we played them twice in like 6 days or
Mhm.
something like that. I want to say Lively wasn't available for one as well, or maybe he was but was limited. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, the Pacers are kind of a unique comparison anyway, just because of their pace.
And I do
It's a
suspect
fitting title for their name.
I do suspect that maybe the Wolves will probably know that we kind of struggle with that type of stuff, and so I can see a Reed Towns lineup in there.
Mm-hmm.
If that's completely feasible for them to work out. And then that's like almost their version of 5 out, and then hopefully I'm not sure if there's even an update on Maxey or anything like that, but
I haven't heard anything yet on it.
Yeah.
No, I've been looking for it.
that will be something. I mean, that would be our way to counter it,
Mhm.
or I don't know. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a very tough series, man. I mean, I am looking forward to it because hey, it is the Western Conference Final.
Sure. And unlike 2 years ago, this roster is not held together by chewing gum and scotch tape.
Exactly. It's not the case that it is, all like, well, I guess lightning in a bottle. It's not a lightning in a bottle type.
Yeah.
Stretch that we're having. I mean, if we have to be real about this numbers wise, Luka and Kyrie, have been playoff downers.
Yeah.
Luka averaged 34. He's averaging around like what 26 or something these offseason.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, his numbers are going down. It's because he's doing other things that are contributing to winning, like playing high level defense.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I'm measured now, but like you see me during these games, I'm a freaking animal.
Yeah.
So, like, I thought you told me he can't play defense. Anyway, but Kyrie's also doing the same. He's been freaking. He's not shut down, but he's using a lot of his energy and resources on the defensive side, to where it's contributing a whole lot to winning. I don't see a case when you have our normal lineups of Kyrie, Luka, DJJ, PJ, and one of the centers. There's really, when we're locked in, there's no defensive negative on the court.
Yeah.
Where I do believe that's the same for Minnesota.
Yeah.
So
that was sort of the thing in the last round. Like Gafford was like a minus 68 or something for that series, but it's because Chet being one of those unicorn type players, it was just not a good matchup for him on, defensively speaking, being drawn away from the basket as much as he was.
Yeah.
But Lively has the lateral quickness and everything, and that quick bounce and everything to kind of stay with it. And so, yeah, he was a plus 71, but Gafford just really struggled. I expect Gafford to return much more to form here. I'm not saying he's going to be like, like we've seen at times since he became a Maverick in the regular season, where he'll have like 17 and 14 or something like that. Maybe that'd be phenomenal. I would absolutely love to see that.
Great.
But because of who he's matching up with, like you said, like Rudy Gobert is a great defender. He has no offensive game to speak of. Lively today is a better offensive player than Rudy Gobert.
Very true.
So just having that kind of matchup is already going to make it a little easier for Gafford, not having to stretch out and be as concerned about, a guy drawing him out to the 3-point line is going to help him. So I expect him to bounce back, because when the Mavericks, between drafting Lively and making the trade they did for Gafford, like those were made in part for when you go up against a team like Minnesota. So having that size to counter size, having that athleticism in the case of Lively to kind of counter is huge. And OKC was just one of the teams remaining, like the team that could most stress that in an unusual way.
Yeah.
So I expect the centers to return to form here, which the fact that Lively was so good last series, bodes well, but at the same time, because of that was partly a matchup driven thing. I think Lively will still be big, but I don't expect him to have quite the same impact in this round. Maybe, hopefully I'm wrong, but I expect that because of the comparable size. And as we mentioned, like just the overall, like body frames and everything, the guys he's going to be battling with, it's different than battling with Chet, who's 7'3", but a beanstalk.
Yeah. And
Jay
Will or whatever, Jalen Williams, who's probably like 6'9".
Yep.
And probably still not that big too. So yeah, I mean, like we've been saying all show long, this is gonna be tough. Do you have any, I guess, predictions?
Predictions for this series? Well, the Mavericks all time are 3-0 against the Timberwolves in the playoffs. And because the Dirk KG debate refuses to die, because the Timberwolves now have a big man besmirching the name of Dirk, claiming that he is the greatest big man shooter of all time, because Kyrie is 14-0 in closeout games, because Jason Kidd is 5-0 in closeout games, and unbeaten in game sixes, I believe. Don't talk about game one. We don't talk about game ones. Because of all of these trends, I'm going to take this to say Mavericks in 7. And I waffled between 6 and 7. And it boils down to, I do feel like Luka is turning a little bit of a corner in terms of health. I don't think he'll ever be back to like his like height of his powers we saw this season. I think he's just beat up in a way that's going to take weeks and weeks to just recover from. But having said that, what we saw for 3 of the last 4 games, I feel like, of that series, he looked himself. And so I'm thinking if he's somewhere hovering around 70%, that combined with their matchups that we talked about, their ability to not have to worry as much on an offensive sense, but also have some better, more favorable matchups in some sense, not the guards. The guards are going to have to fight for their lives for what they get.
Yeah.
But I think you're going to have a little bit of a game that feeds into what became a strength of yours after the trade deadline. And that is, we'll deal with the physicality. We'll deal with the battle in the paint and everything, the war in the trenches, because we've got 2 superstars that can close. And even Luka's banged up games, he still had plenty of times this year where he's been able to close strong. I think all of that bodes well for them, where it's like, we'll go to war with you and we'll fight the ugly game, but we've got the 2 guys that can close it out even in an ugly game. Yeah. And that's just something that so few teams can really contend with. And yeah, Anthony Edwards is a monster. I expect him to have, in terms of point production, a similar impact to what we just saw from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's going to be an absolute menace for us. I guess part of the difference is when I look at what else they have, Naz Reid is something that's going to have to be contended with for sure. But looking at what they got offensively outside of that, I just feel like you're contending with a little bit less offensive firepower, and your team is so defensively oriented and anchored now that is going to play some kind of role for the Mavericks in this. So I'm leaning Dallas, but I could see this going either way, really.
I'm the same. I can see a pathway. Like if I'm a betting man, I would definitely. I know I love the Mavericks, but I will. If you put a gun to my head and you told me I had to put my money on a team to win, I will most likely put my team on the Minnesota Timberwolves. However, I do think this can go either way. I don't think this is as much of a, a lot of people think they're fair. I think even in Vegas, they're Minnesota's favored, but like not super insurmountably. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I do think it can go either way. I hope we can start off strong. Get a game 1 win, break that curse. I do think we have the best player. We have the best 2 players in the series, so there is a chance. And we've seen Gobert before. There's a lot of things even though this team is very talented defensively, they have talent offensively too. They have a rising star in Anthony Edwards. I see a lot of things that can be construed as favorable for the Mavericks.
Yeah.
Right? Young team, inexperienced. We have the best player in this. We have the best player in the series who's actually playing better than how he did at the beginning of the playoffs. His numbers are beginning, especially shooting three wise, is beginning to regress back to the mean, which means it is probably getting better because Luka did have his best shooting games, his best shooting percentages in terms of threes this season. And I think it was like 30? Was he over 40 or something? But anyway,
yeah,
it was high 30s. I know it was around 38, 39.
Yep.
With a lot of volume, and we're seeing that rise back up to what the normal levels is. That can be very stressful for the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
These games are going to be defensive struggles, so I'm guessing they're probably going to be close games towards the end. And if that's the case, we have the two best closers in the league. So my heart says Mavs in 6.
Okay.
My heart says Mavs in 6. My head says Wolves in 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there you have it. And he has sold out the Mavericks and has put all of his money on the Timberwolves. That's what I heard in all of that. Now, like I said, everybody is going to pick basically any possible matchup remaining in the playoffs the Mavericks could have against them. They're never going to be favored. And that would just mean, by the way, that they weren't favored in a single series this year. And
I think they were, at least in terms of Vegas, they were favored against the Clippers.
They were favored against the Clippers because of the Kawhi thing. Once that
was probably a big factor.
Okay. All right.
He didn't play for like weeks before that series.
Well, if it was favored there, it was narrow.
Yeah.
Because like the revisionist history people want to have is funny. Like people acting like, oh, OKC, worst number 1 seed ever. Like that's the dumbest conversation. Or they'll say like, oh yeah, well the Mavericks were supposed to win that series. Says who? Who said that going in? Who looked at the team that was the number 2 finisher in MVP, runner-up rookie of the year, coach of the year, number 1 seed, top 5 offense and defense.
Yeah,
who looked at any of that? 0 injuries on their depth chart going into that. Who looked at that and said like, oh yeah, everyone expects the Mavericks to get
according to some people, even had a better trade deadline than
I know. Yeah. Wild. Now to be fair, I was baffled by how they used, or rather didn't use, Hayward. I'm convinced he could have given them something more than that, because you play, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, it's kind of on you too. You played 46 minutes in the postseason and attempted 3 shots. That's not like letting the game come to you. That's just you like not doing anything. I don't know what to tell you. You had garbage minutes in there. You could have gotten some shots up.
Exactly.
So yeah, just wild, unhinged there. But as I look at this matchup, I do feel like this is going to be another war. I keep talking every round, war of attrition. It favored Dallas going into that Clippers series. But as that series wore on, I got concerned with it as we started seeing how banged up Luka was.
Yeah.
And then I was really terrified of it in the Thunder series. So the fact that they came out the other side of that and now at least get a little bit of rest. God, I wish they had held on in game 4 and not pissed that away, because you would have had like a full week of rest before having to deal with any of this. And then them coming off a 7-game series against Denver.
Yeah,
you would have finally
had to come back
about a game 1
down.
matchup. Even with this, I'm like, okay, well, you still got a little bit of rest, but I don't know. It's like at some point, Kid has done a great job, and his record shows this, because losing game 1 like he has every time, he always comes back. The only time he didn't win right after that was that Warriors series in 22. They went down 3-0, but they should have. If you remember, they were up 16 late in that game before they let that one get away. So the adjustments that he gets, the response he gets out of his team after that. His counter punches are good. The problem is there's not enough in-game counter punch, and his feel for like when to call a damn timeout doesn't seem to be very good. Thunder going like a 24-6 run to close out the first half of game 6 and put you in a 16-point hole, and Jason's just watching the whole thing go on, never calling a timeout. Like, what are you doing, man? This is your one job right now. So yes, I give him credit, but I also look at moments like this and I'm just like, this is where you concern me, where like it doesn't even seem like you have to be a high-end coach to have that feel for it. And it's like, it can't just be as simple as like, I just want to see how the team responds. We're not at a stage where we can just afford to wait for them to respond.
Nope.
Like you have to be the one that's like, all right, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling momentum swinging the other way here. This run has gotten to like 10-0 or 10-2 or something like that. Back it up. Back it up. Let's take a moment, reset, and try and get a good possession here. And just not doing it. So the adjustments are good. The chess moves he's made overwhelmingly
from game to game,
work. For him, usually it's in-game adjustments, the rotation wonkiness of like putting way too much trust in Hardaway. Or as you said, like when you ran that weird lineup where you had Hardy, Kyrie, and Hardaway, those kind of moments. Or just sometimes it's the challenge, like when to use it and not to use it. To be fair, every one of his players seemed to be calling for a review last year,
regardless if they have challenges or not.
PJ, everybody was doing like this became like the standard like in Fortnite terms, like the emotes that guys were just spamming after every play, and it was just like, guys, you're out of reviews at this point. You just stop it.
Yeah, we're 3 minutes into the game.
Yeah,
relax.
Good Lord, just absolutely wild.
Admiral was chewing up a lot of his challenges earlier on too. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, dude? Like, if I'm a coach, I am not using a single challenge till the fourth quarter. Honestly, especially if it's close. If it's close, I'll be like, look, I feel like my team is good enough to make up for any mistake the refs do, right? But when we get to winning time, it's like, we need to make calls here. We need to get the ball. We need possessions here. If we can get one away, then by all means, let's do it. But for there are times when he might use a time or a challenge way too early, and then some egregious call at the end of the game will happen, and we're just like, I really would
have that.
Yeah, like, come on, man. But it happened, especially with they didn't challenge that Lou Dort screen at the end of that, or Lou.
No, they had already used both their challenges. They won the first challenge, and they challenged another play, and I can't remember if they won the second one, but I think they lost the second one, but they had already used both their challenges.
Yeah, because that Lou Dort one was complete trash, and that
where PJ got called for the foul, and then they're going to the line basically to cut it to one, and then they get a bucket on that possession too. Yeah,
definitely would want a challenge on that one. But,
the thing is, like, I'm mixed on that, because in the NBA you don't have to be set. You don't have to have your feet set. You just have to be squared up to the guy, like basically beating him to the point. And with how that game was officiated, I don't think you would have won that challenge. It would have been worth trying, but I don't think you would have won that challenge. I mean, the way the game was officiated, even when PJ got fouled on the shot at the end, I was like, okay, that's a foul because of the double clutch. But do I trust Tony Brothers to actually like, correctly apply the rule? Or is he going to say like, oh, no, he capped the ball, ergo his hand becomes part of the ball at that point. It's clean.
Yeah, I was watching that game with my brother. I was watching with my family. And my brother was like commenting on how they're going to uphold it. And I was literally just telling him like, listen, shut up. Honestly, you can come up with all the rationale. We've heard refs say their rationale, and then the very same thing will happen in another instance, and they'll just completely throw what they previously said away. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna hope. I'm gonna hope for whatever happens. And because I was like, I didn't even know. I didn't even know if they considered the double clutch or not. Because I mean, I did see it.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, he got all ball, but he hasn't really shot it yet. And then after, before he tried to shoot it, he did. So I wasn't confident enough, because just out of pure ignorance of the rule, I couldn't have been like, that's 100% that's a foul. I was like, there's definitely contact.
Yeah.
but I don't know. There was definitely contact on the ball,
Mm-hmm.
and there was definitely contact on the hand, and I didn't know. I
Yeah.
couldn't argue either way.
Yeah.
But thank God it was PJ. I don't know if he had the presence of mind to double clutch it and then be like, oh, you
Right.
fouled me, then shoot it, or he just did it and just
I think SGA just got there so fast he literally capped it, and PJ just trying to like pull the ball away from him and then just fling it at the basket to at least get a shot off is
Yeah.
what saved it.
Mhm.
Had it been a millisecond different and the ball is already starting to release, it would have just been screwed. But
Yeah.
SGA got there. He sold out so hard for it. He got there too early, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if it doesn't get called that way or whatever, then you're like, oh, what a phenomenal play from SGA. But it's
Mhm.
like, dude, that's a risky ass play. I would never
That's
say like that's
crazy.
the play to make. Like, no. SGA said it after the game. Like, given another chance, I would have just lived or died with him making it. Contest it, but like,
Yeah.
just see if he can make it. You know, like don't put yourself in that situation to allow a whistle to come into play.
It was definitely a moment of he was, like you said, there early, and then he was like thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and then sometimes when you're in that moment,
Yeah.
you're like, I can get this. I see the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right there. I can make sure he doesn't hit the shot.
Yep.
And then that happened. So
Yeah,
that's what happens when you're a young team. Those are the type of things you need to learn.
Yeah, I was convinced they were going to overturn it and say because they blew the whistle, the Kyrie tip in was waved off, and it was going to be 2.5 seconds left, side out for Dallas. I was convinced that's where we were headed, and I was just like, what a way to screw us over, because we're going to end up with what we always end up with there, the Luka like step back from the top of the key with like heavy coverage or something. It's just like that's going to be such a gut punch to lose that game again that way and then have to go back for game 7. But nope, actually got the call. So very, very fortunate in PJ delivering on that, despite not being a good free throw shooter in his career, especially with Dallas. He's not been very good.
Yeah.
So kudos to him.
I do love how PJ has become like a cult fan favorite.
Yeah.
Just overnight, dude. Since that Clippers series and across the arms, and now everyone wants shirts.
Everyone trying to strike that pose on Dallas, trying to do his thing, has suffered the wrath. Paul George did it, and then the rest of that series went very poorly for them. They never won again after he did that.
Did OKC? Did they try?
Thunder did that.
Oh,
and they never won again. Dallas won the last 2 games. They did it when they got off their jet. I think it was Jalen Williams who also had the audacity to stare down Dirk on the sideline after hitting his buzzer beater to close the first quarter. I think it was the first quarter. It's like, what are you staring down Dirk for? It'd be one thing if it was like if you were playing the Celtics and it was like Paul Pierce running his mouth, talking out of his ass on like ESPN or something. Which I know he's not there anymore, but running his mouth, and then like also you see him at courtside staring him down. In that case, would make sense.
Yeah,
Dirk is like, what has Dirk ever said to anybody? He barely knows your name.
if it's a Spike Lee type person, then you got to bust out the choke stuff. But anyway, Dirk probably hasn't said. In fact, the only person he probably yelled at was Luka at that game.
Yep. So that's a wild thing of that, and the Thunder are very young and brash. I like the moxie, but there were times it definitely got the better of them, whether it was the weird barking thing or whatever they would do, or just that kind of attitude, like having the us versus everybody mentality. It is great for bringing the team together, but it's also going to piss everybody else off and annoy them. And so eventually somebody's going to humble you with it, and you're going to have to kind of take that on the chin and just kind of come back from it after that. So that's kind of what that moment was like. When you have Williams staring down Dirk, it's like, why? And the answer is there's not really a reason. He just saw him there, and he was just like, this feels like the tough guy.
You just got to do something. You just got to do something.
Yeah, whether it's Russell Westbrook or any other of these guys, Michael Jordan, like the things that they will create fictional chips to put on their shoulder to motivate them. That's what it is. Like,
for sure.
It's just like, I know who you are and what you mean to this. So this is me at war with the Mavericks organization. That includes the players of the past and their GOAT, So that's kind of what that felt like. But we'll see what this is, what this series looks like here, because this is going to be a really interesting battle. Like I said, I'm one of those people that's late to the Anthony Edwards party. Like, I know he's 22, so it's like, how late can you really be? But for the first 2 or 3 years, it's like, I see the talent. I don't see the comparisons people jump to or why this guy is supposed to be like the guy. About halfway through this year, I was like, all right, son of a bitch. Okay, yes, I do see there's something there. And now this playoff run has been just like,
he definitely has the total package.
Yeah.
He has the total package. Like, how people are trying to push Jason Tatum on us.
Yep.
As, you know, quote unquote, the face of the league. And it's like, no, he's not that guy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
A lot of the times he's not even leading this team. And he's boring. But you know, you definitely have, you know, the game with Anthony Edwards. You have the personality of Anthony. Since the moment he stepped in the league, he had that personality, and now people are like gravitating to him. He completely snatched the organization from Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yep.
Right now, Karl-Anthony Towns is almost looking at him. Not almost. He is looking at him like he's the team. But, you know, like we said, he's 22 years old. And he's in the Western Conference Finals. Who knows? That can be a, you know, tall task for him. You know, Denver, although they're a good defensive team, I don't think they have the tools defensively that the Mavericks do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I didn't really watch much of the Timberwolves games, but, you know, I highly doubt he had someone as long as a Derrick Jones Jr. on him, or PJ Washington. But of course, you know, as good as they are, they do have holes in stuff that they would like to plug up. They don't have a real shot blocker or rim protector over there in Denver. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to play Denver.
Yeah,
I think that would have been very feasible for me to see the Mavericks win that one. And I think life would have been easier for Luke and Kyrie to get in the lane and do a lot of things with it. It would have been a lot easier for Lively and Gafford because they didn't have to. Well, offensively, defensively, they would have had to guard Joker. So don't worry about anything else than catching lobs and guarding Joker. But now I think this one's going to be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit of things that we got to worry about. Karl-Anthony Towns, or if you're the one on Gobert, you know, you almost got to think about, you know, what shots you want to fully sell yourself to block, or, you know, if you have a good enough read to completely, you know, get it back in our favor. Because one thing you don't want to do is completely sell out for the block.
Yeah.
And yes, you might have, you know, changed the shot or, you know, even influenced it to make a miss, but they have Rudy Gobert on the other end ready to just flush it down and get an ET2.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one thing that we're going to have to contest with. But, you know, it's funny, as we've been talking about this, I've kind of like, okay, I can see how this can work out for the Mavs. I can see how this can work out for the Mavs. You know, it's definitely not as insurmountable like I was kind of thinking about at the beginning. Did you see what Tim Legler tweeted?
He thinks that the Wolves should be the ones that go on to win the championship, but he's picking Dallas in the series. Like, basically, it's like what logic tells me versus what I feel is going to happen.
So I think I'm the same with him. So I have the tweet pulled up. So it's sitting here trying to decipher this Dallas Mavs Timberwolves series. This morning on Get Up, I was asked who should be the favorite to win it all, and he said the Wolves, right? Because they have earned the right to be viewed that way. But if I wasn't asked who I believe wins the Western Conference Final Series, and my answer to that is Dallas.
Now, Legs has been on the Mavs bus, back in November, or not November. It's like February, like right after the trade, like within a week or so, he was just like, no, there's something here and you guys need to pay attention. He was like the first one to really get on board.
Yeah, he was definitely the, what do they call it? The canary in the coal mine. He was definitely trying to let people know.
I'll
While
take his
everyone,
endorsement because so far the only other national person I've seen jump on the Mavericks bus at all is not an endorsement I want. The only former player I've seen jump on the Mavericks bus has actually been Paul Pierce, and I was like, oh no.
Hey, man,
I think he just looked at it, was like, you know what?
Yeah,
Everybody else is picking Minnesota. I'm gonna at least try to get the contrarian thing so I can
yeah.
say like,
I
I was the only one who saw
that
it.
station, I think that channel, they just they have to just be characters.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just say stuff they don't. I wouldn't put it past Paul Pierce to believe that Timberwolves were going to win, but he just has to, just for ratings or just so they can be a contrarian view, you'll just have to say Mavericks, because they definitely, if you noticed, the hate that Skip had for LeBron has died down.
Yep.
Because there wasn't that LeBron bandwagoner on the other end in Shannon. And, Shannon has been a lot more measured in his takes since joining ESPN. So it was just like, they just have a bunch of characters on the side that don't watch those shows to be like, oh, this is where I need to get insight from.
Yeah, no, there's no insight. Like, unless you have
it's all entertainment at this point.
Yeah.
Just entertainment in suits, essentially.
I love this that I see here. So after the game, Jokic talking last night was saying he was asked whether or not the Timberwolves and Nuggets are basically rivals at this point. He says, quote, yes, I think they're built to beat us. They have basically 2 all-stars, 2 all-defensive first-team players, and Mike Conley, who's the most underrated player in the NBA probably.
Okay.
I love that guy. He's so good. And
if you would have stopped the sentence there, that would have been really fucked up for Mike Conley. They have two MVPs, 2 first-team all guys, and then Mike Conley.
Yeah.
Hey man, what I do?
And the subtweet here, this is from a Twitter account per sources, says, as I've said 100 times, Tim Connolly built the team to beat Jokic. Their problem now, Dallas plays nothing like Denver. Which interesting kind of take here.
Meter just went up.
Yeah. So I'll be real interested to see how this unfolds. I think health is going to be a big part of it because on paper, both teams fully healthy, I would take Dallas's chances comfortably. I feel like that doesn't mean I don't think it would be a battle and a war, but I think the difference here is not ever really knowing almost game to game where Luka's really at gives me pause. So we'll see. Dallas has done a really good job adjusting and finding ways to stress that. After game 1, really, even game 2, we were kind of saying it in the last series, but after game 1 especially, we were like, man, they're just selling out, collapsing all 5 in the paint, daring those role players to beat them with those corner threes. And you look at the percentages of the guys Dallas has, like PJ had, again, we said it, sub 32% since coming over to Dallas. Derek Jones Jr. had been better the last 2 years, but it's still right around or even just a hair under league average for that sense, like a 33, 34% 3-point shooter for the most part. When you're having to look from a percentage standpoint to find a guy that's good for that, and the best thing you're finding is Josh Green at 40%, but he doesn't shoot a lot of them, and he's so erratic, hot and cold. It really kind of made you say, man, with how the Thunder are playing, how do you have enough shot making from your role players to overcome this? How do you offset what they're doing? But Dallas found a way. Part of it was the guys stepped up. Part of it was they just found ways to get them even better looks still from the corners, but just kept finding unique ways to get them the ball and to create that space and those opportunities. And then they found other action, like posting up PJ on Shea. Dude, I talked about this in the stream yesterday. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander got 2 third-place votes for Defensive Player of the Year. Did you track how he was defensively in the series? After game 1, the Mavericks started running that action with PJ posting him up in the low post and going to work, and the action that created for the offense for the Mavericks opened things up in a dimension we hadn't really seen much of before. So that was already really cool. PJ had his 3 games going off 29, 27, and 22, 3 straight games leading the Mavericks in scoring, which, to give that greater context, since Luka and Kyrie had paired together, PJ's 29-point game was the first time in a game in which Luka and Kyrie played that neither of them led the team in scoring. PJ basically did it for 3 straight games after that. After game 3, OKC said, "Oh, okay, they're causing problems for us here. Move Shea over to Derrick Jones Jr." Well, then Derrick Jones Jr. had his 3 playoff career highs the next 3 games. He had like 19, 17, and 22 respectively. So it's just like you had a guy that got votes for Defensive Player of the Year getting just hunted, and like that wasn't really talked about. Like people would still want to, rip on Luka for his defense, even though what he was doing, or say that Kai's not a defender, even though he was doing some great things as well. And they're not going to criticize Shea, despite the fact that he was being hunted and he was the detriment that OKC could not find an answer for, where it's like, dude, we're hiding you on guys that aren't even supposed to be good offensive players, or at least, PJ can be, but like has not been shooting the 3 ball well with Dallas in his 29 games in the regular season. So when you couldn't hide him, that was a problem. I'm curious looking at this series now, how that might impact that, because they have great defenders. I think they're going to have a little bit of an easier time with that, but is that just going to open things up for Luka and Kyrie where they don't have to get creative in how they do that? You know what I mean? Like they're not going to just say like, okay, we're not going to let wide open looks constantly for these guys in the corners, whether it's PJ, Derrick Jones Jr., or if we do get some more Exum minutes. I still think he can contribute. We just haven't seen it yet. I don't know.
I don't know. I wish there was like a way to just, I don't know, hypnotize these people and be like, look, this is a regular season game. The measurements are all the same. Just play your game. You were too good. You were too good in the regular season to to be completely useless in the postseason. Yeah. You gotta shift that mind to be like, yo, this is basketball. I played this my whole life. I had a good run. There's no reason why, other than this playoffs and whatever. But I feel like even just pressure, because he's been getting good looks. Yeah, and he wasn't even shooting in regular season unless it was a good shot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he's just missing them. Is only because of the pressure that playoff causes. So it's just, hey, get your head out your ass and play basketball like you've been doing this whole year.
Yep. I love how ESPN's preview for the conference finals, their opening paragraph seems to leave some team out of the mix here. Says the league leading Boston Celtics continued their dominant run through the Eastern Conference with their second straight 5-game series win, this time against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Boston will next face a surprising Indiana Pacers team who routed the shorthanded Knicks in 7. In the Western Conference, Minnesota Timberwolves knocked off Jokic and the defending champion Nuggets in a thrilling 7-game series to reach the conference finals for the first time since 2004. And then we just go on to it. There's literally not even a mention of who Timberwolves are playing. There's no mention of Luka or him being an MVP finalist. Like
there's definitely some weird things going on.
It's not even oversight at this point. It's not like
it's not even like conspiracy theory type stuff. It's like it's in our face. Like
it's intentional at this point. And I gotta think when they did
the playoff promos and we were talking about playoff this person, playoff this person. Is like, well, how come you didn't get like Luka or Kyrie to be like? Maybe Luka doesn't want to be in the commercials. I completely get it, but like Kyrie, you didn't want to get him. Like what? I don't understand. And then, I don't know. It's completely weird. A bunch of guys have all these opinions of the Mavericks, but haven't watched a single game, or their opinions are so outdated and stuff like that. People, they just now, literally, it took them almost like a whole series to be like, okay, the Mavericks have played good defense. That's crazy. But it's like, bro, we've been doing this since February, my guy. Like, you should watch your game or two. Like, it's crazy how you think that's the case. But anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing where it's intentional at this point. Like, there's always been that anti-Luka bias sort of thing, and then it paired with the Kyrie thing, which was its own can of worms for a year or so there. And so while there are people who have kind of backed off of that stance, it still hasn't like reached the media, it feels like, at large. It's like the only way Kyrie would have been absolved of the sins in the broader media would be if he did go to LA to play with LeBron.
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah.
convinced that is the only way
Oh yeah.
the anti-Kyrie narrative would have
It
gone
would
away
have switched. It would have switched
like
on
that
him way
immediately.
faster.
The
Yeah.
LeBron bias is greater than the other issues they had with Kyrie's comments and everything back with the Nets.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So,
for sure. For
yeah,
sure.
just absolutely wild. So, yeah, this, I mentioned earlier the Luka 2 years ago hunting Gobert in that Utah series. I forgot to even mention, was it the Olympics or was it a FIBA? But Slovenia playing France, same thing, hunting Gobert.
Was that for? I think that was.
I think it was that offseason.
Yeah.
Luka immediately went and played for Slovenia.
Yeah.
And again, going at Gobert. It wasn't even just like, oh, it's just that serious. Like, no, these were.
That was Eurobasket, wasn't that? The game where they were a game away from.
That was the
a point away from the gold
like 1
medal,
point away.
The gold medal game.
Yeah, that was the Olympics.
Batum got the clutch block.
Yeah,
I think that might have been Eurobasket.
I'm convinced
the U.S.
it's fine. Regardless, the point is to say,
it was the Olympics.
What? Yeah, because that was the whole thing, was like Slovenia even qualifying in that position, being in the Olympics and being a block shot away like a fingertip block away from being in the gold medal game. And then unfortunately they didn't even get a bronze out of that.
Yeah,
but
D-Star is probably correct. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I did make comments about it. Like he basically took a country as big as the city of Houston, the gold medal game. Yeah.
Yeah. So being in that sort of position, it's like he's made a point. It's kind of like when you got Zubats. Now we didn't see it much this year because of where Luka's own health was at, but hunting Zubats is like sport for Luka.
Yeah.
It's like duck hunt out there, except he's going after Zubats or whatever. Yeah. He's done the same thing even with Gobert. So if Luka is some form of himself and you got Kyrie that's some form of himself, I think what you're going to be able to do attacking Gobert is going to be huge. The question is the point of attack defenders. How are they going to be able to hold them in? Because again, McDaniel is very good. I think a similar caliber of Dort, but I don't think he has the same physicality.
You wouldn't have the same physicality. He's not as big. He has a slight frame.
Yeah.
I think Luka does pretty well against those guys. He is long, however, pause.
Yeah. But. And we talked about like Dort being so physical. Like usually guys being physical with Luka doesn't work well for them, but Dort almost took that to such an extreme that he started finally like making the difference that way.
Well, I guess that's how you make the difference, is completely
flying knees, flying elbows,
tripping him even on offense. And
yeah, just absolutely wild. So like from that standpoint, if it doesn't have the same physicality, that does bode well for Luka's stability in the series. But yeah, the length and athleticism, the whether it's intercepting passes or just flying to the ball, swarming defense, that still remains a real challenge. So the point of attack is going to be huge for Dallas. How they're able to create those mismatches, how they're able to then take advantage of that, and if they can create those switches, cashing that in. But yeah, if you guys got any questions in the comments, let us know. Tag either at the Dallas Prospect or at DDP. I'll see either one of those. But as we get ready to wrap this up, I'll be curious to field any of that. Is there anything else you want to add to the discourse in general as we talk about this whole series matchup? I feel like as we talked about it, we both went from extremely apprehensive to more optimistic, which is either a good sign, or we've just started like drinking the Kool-Aid and just like, you know what? No, we got this.
No, I feel like when you talk your way through it, there is some things that can bode well for the Mavericks, or on the Mavericks side. And literally I would honestly say prior to the playoffs, if you really thought about it, prior to, I guess, the playoffs being played, a lot of people were not necessarily scared of the Minnesota Timberwolves. But they showed you why you should be, right? I guess who they played before. I forgot who they played first round. Oh, Phoenix. Not anything to be impressed about. The Phoenix is not a good team.
Yeah, they got swept.
And then and so what's really impressive is they took Denver to 7 games and really gave them trouble. Where this is where I will caution people. If you really thought about Denver, I remember going into the year and thinking Denver is not as strong of a team than they
As the
were last
previous
year.
two.
They lost a lot of kind of, I don't want to say a lot of, but they lost some pretty key role players. They weren't as deep. If you're, they had to start playing Reggie. What's his name? Reggie, not Bullock. What's this guy's name? He was on the Clippers. Goggles, headband.
Oh, Jackson?
Reggie Jackson. There
Action
you go.
Jackson?
Action Jackson. Bruce Brown proved to be a really big loss for them. So they weren't as strong of a team, but for some reason, when you come off a championship, the overall opinion is coming out of the season is this team's gonna repeat, or they're the favorites to repeat. Whereas okay, not a lot of people have repeated. It's actually quite difficult to repeat.
Yeah.
So yes, they took them to 7, and yes, they beat the defending champs, but are they as good as we are projecting? Maybe because we're just worried, and as Mavs fans, we're always looking for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Right. I do have a case of that sometimes. And so when you really think about it, yes, the Wolves are still the favorites, and yes, they're still going to be a good team, but there are some things that are pretty favorable on the Mavs side. That's why I believe that, as we were talking about this, we're like, you know what, this is not going to be as crazy. Hopefully it's not as crazy as we think it's going to be, or our stuff is.
Yeah. Check out this tweet from NBA University on Twitter. He says, the secret sauce to Dallas's success this postseason is destroying the offensive glass. They're grabbing 32.5% of their own misses in the playoffs, trailing only the Knicks. That's Lively, Gafford, Derrick Jones Jr., PJ, Kyrie, Green, and Luka all grabbing at least one offensive rebound a game, by the way. That is a staggering stat. Now, to be fair, that is something that is going to be challenged a little bit in the series.
Yeah. How is the Wolves rebounding?
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me here, but that is something to consider here. And as I look down in the thread a little bit, I do see NBA University mentioning Minnesota is huge, and that avenue might dry up a little bit. But yeah, basically they're acknowledging that's going to be challenged here in this round. So
yeah,
be real interesting to see where this goes. But very, very interesting trend. Yeah, the offensive glass has been very kind to Dallas, and if they can keep that up, then you're going to have your opportunities. You can win the bruising, low-scoring games when you get that many opportunities, when you're creating those out. And that's why we were starved for years, it felt like, when we just couldn't rebound. Rebounding was like our biggest thing. It's like, dude, I don't care if you're shooting.
Starting center is averaging 4 rebounds a game. That's what tends to happen.
Yeah, like if I don't care if you are shooting 60% from the field as a team. If you can't get any offensive rebounds, or especially defensive rebounds,
yeah,
you're gonna lose. You're gonna be in a situation where you're fighting for your life in a game you should be firmly in control.
Yeah. So, 2 Western Conference Finals berths in 3 years.
Yep.
What do you feel? And you just said the answer, but what do you feel is the difference between this team and the team in 22?
I mean, you're built for it. The team from 22 was like, that was really like, yeah, Luka showing up and Dallas's coaching staff making great strategic decisions, basically conceding like, look, we know we're going to lose the rebounding battle. We know we're going to lose the points in the paint. We know that we're going to lose, in some cases, maybe even the turnover battle, but we're going to just bludgeon you with swarming defense and timely 3-point shooting. We're going to have so many shooters to space the floor. Like, we're just going to throw everything at you to try and get that. So many times, especially in that Utah series, you were seeing Utah getting like thunderous dunks, and their crowd would go nuts. And then Dallas immediately splashes a 3 on the other side. It's like, still a -1. Still a -1. Like, every possession, it seemed like Dallas responded that way. And it was just like, dude, the dunks stop having power if you keep doing that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just what it felt like. This is different, though. This is like, no, they're built on like an actual top to bottom, it's not just the chemistry, because the chemistry was good, right? We always said we stopped using the phrase, but we used to say the vibes are immaculate. That team had vibes, but they didn't have a construction to actually like do that. They were playing over their heads beyond their prowess. And by the time you got to the Warriors in the West Finals, you were like, I really don't think there's any further you can go. I'm hoping, but I just don't see it. And that's how it played out. That's why it was a 5-game series. Should have been even really a 4-game. It was a gentleman's sweep. This is different because you've got not just the dogs, you've got the pieces, you've got the guys like resurrecting their careers, even like Exum, for instance, here as Cowboy X Factor mentions. You've got rebounding, you've got rim protection. You had a total identity shift, and now you're built in a way where you can win those playoff style games. Remember after that Western Finals run in 2022 when Dallas like drastically overhauled its roster and we were trying to convince ourselves of like JaVale McGee. And we were like, okay, Kid is putting his stamp on it. I don't really like this stamp, but let's see what happens. And then
why did we get JaVale McGee a 3-year contract?
Yeah.
It's like
that's the one I'll never understand. And it was a disaster. But then we get to this point here, this juncture, and it's like, okay, this is built like the Kid team he wanted to see. But now you actually have pieces that make sense in that position. So this team is built. They are uniquely suited for this, and they've got 2 superstars. This team is absolutely capable of winning a championship, and that's the difference of this year versus 22.
Yeah. So what I would say the difference is, agree with everything you said. But the style of play and how we got this far, it's a lot more sustainable. It's a lot more dependable from game to game, right? We saw, I would say 21 and 22, the team was built pretty similarly. We didn't have the Spencer Dinwiddie's yet. We still had KP and in 21. But still our play style was still pretty much the same, right? We went up 2-0 on the Clippers. But we ended up losing in 7 because you can't constantly be counting on, we just got to outshoot them. Right. And not really provide. Yes, we had defense. And we brought back, all we lost was Jalen Brunson. We added JaVale McGee and whatever. And our defense fell to the floor. Right. So that means that even the pieces that we had defensively, it wasn't necessarily sustainable for another run. That's why, the year afterwards, it was a total disaster. I completely believe that if we were going to if we went into the next, year with this group, I feel like we'll still be able to play high level defense. We'll still be able to, get rebounding, a lot of the things that we, struggled in. There will be no Kevon Looney's that will have the career, playoff series against us, like what happened last. On
2 years ago,
right? Very, very much sustainable defense. I've said this on other podcasts, but defense travels way better than offense does, right? We've seen so many people, completely plummet offensively in the postseason, right? But defensively, a lot of the times, even though when people are not playing that good, it's very rare, unless a player gets really exposed. It's very rare to see a great defender go to like, okay, he's not that good of a defender. We used to think people used to accuse Rudy Gobert of that, but it was like, that really wasn't Rudy Gobert's fault. He just had terrible perimeter defense around him.
What he had to, how much he had to help out. Stretching him too thin.
That's definitely not the case this time. I'm back. Okay, cool. Anyway, so I do think it's sustainable. I do think I can count on game by game, PJ, Derek Jones Jr. and our centers. Even I'm not even viewing Luka and Kyrie as negatives, or even I do think they're very capable of playing defense. I'm not necessarily scared. Like when they ISO on Luka, I'm not as scared as I used to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yep. So, there's definitely some things that there's some differences between this year and 22 that I'm a lot more and there's still ways that we can get better going into the next year.
Yeah.
Like I didn't necessarily see in 22.
Yeah. No, 22, you were trying to hold pat for the most part.
Yeah, get
You
back
can
here a
get
little
better
bit.
here, but I think huge is
Mhm.
finding a way to keep Derek Jones Jr.
Yep.
They got to figure some stuff out. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I did see that Mavs CBA put out an article breaking down all the scenarios of that, and so I'm going to check that out here today. But yeah, well, I think that about wraps us up on time here. So we both are leaning Mavericks, head versus heart a little bit, but
Mhm.
it's all right. Only Indy betrayed them, really. So
My heart's still with
we'll
us,
we'll
guys.
see what it's got. Game 1 is Wednesday night. I'll be really curious to see if Dallas can finally cash in one of those Game 1 checks because they're due. At some
Yeah.
point, they got to get one.
At some point.
Some point, and Minnesota coming off of that game that they're coming off of, maybe that's it. So be sure to check that out. We'll be in touch soon, doing probably another show either later the week. At least I will. I don't know your availability yet, but we'll be doing shows talking about the rest of this run, however long or short it might be.
Yep.
So don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time. Next time, I was so ready to throw it to you that I was like, oh, Indy better not mess up again. Wait, what the hell did I just say? Next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Peace.